Breaking earlier today, according to the Washington Post, Vivek Ramaswamy, the co-commissioner of the proposed Department of Government Efficiency, is planning a run for governor of Ohio. Will Elon be left to be running DOGE by himself? Who comes in to take Vivek's place? This all leads to the broader question. DOGE is such a gem of a concept, a beautiful injection of MAGA cleanup. What is its long-term future? Does it disappear with its creators? I hope not. Congressmen like Michael Cloud of Texas are making sure the ideas and what the proposed department represents is here to stay. How? Well, he's here to explain it to us. He's introduced on Thursday the Federal Agency Sunset Commission Act to keep the bloat of the federal bureaucracy in check. Its purpose is to reinforce DOGE's mission. Joining us now is Congressman Michael Cloud. Congressman, thank you so much for making the time.
Oh, sure thing. Good to be with you.
How does this bill work, and how do we actually ensure DOGE goes on?
Well, you know, DOGE has excited so many people here on the Hill, but it's excited many people, of course, across America. We know that the federal government has grown way beyond its original intent. The idea was to have a limited government that maximized freedom among Americans, and of course, as government grows, freedoms get restricted. And as we especially head to a fiscal cliff, $36 trillion in debt, we have come to a point where this is a crisis where we've got to get our federal situation under control. And so the creativity, of course, that Vivek and Elon have brought to the table in addressing some of these fiscal issues that Congress has had trouble dealing with in the past has brought some new energy to it that's really, really important.
Well, my fellow primetime host, your former colleague, Matt Gaetz, he has long said that it's not about the tax cuts. It has to be about the spending. We have to cut bloat. So with DOGE, because it's so new as a concept and its execution it feels so real at the helm of Musk and at the helm of Vivek, we still have basic questions about it. They include things like, well, what is going to go first? Are we going after entitlements? Are we going after just general government bloat in each department? You as a lawmaker, you've had conversations with DOGE. Where does the sentiment lie right now about where to go first?
Well, I think one of the biggest areas we need to start is reining in the federal bureaucracy. And so that'll find us some savings. We'll have to continue to do more. But right now, virtually every single agency has grown well beyond its original mandate. And many of them have just frankly become a burden on the American people, some even weaponized against the American people. And so it's a great place to do, in a sense, what Elon did with Twitter, now X, where he went in, 75% of the employees found another line of work, shall we say, and you have a better product for it. That can happen with the federal government for the American people. We can get rid of a lot of the waste, fraud, abuse, error, corruption, and shrink the federal government, but actually have a better product for the American people to deliver. And so that's really I think the first steps of DOGE. And then you mentioned the bill we introduced, the Federal Sunset Commission Act, and the idea is that right now we have over 1,000 programs, agencies that aren't even authorized. Many of these agencies, programs, it's hard to get a number on what exists. If nobody evaluates after they're built up, if they're actually doing what they were created, are they accomplishing the goals? And so the Federal Agency Sunset Commission Act would basically put in a process that would take what DOGE is starting and create a system where this becomes a habit of the federal government, where we're constantly reevaluating these programs and these agencies to make sure they're providing a good ROI for the American people.
Where do you think you'll have the most difficulty department-wise? If I were to guess, I would imagine the Defense Department would be one of the toughest areas to tackle. The military-industrial complex is strong. Establishment-minded colleagues are very much in line with keeping it alive. Is that going to be the hardest department to go after?
You know, any area that you're going to cut spending or rein in someone's authority or power in Washington, D.C. is going to be difficult. The reason we have the status quo is there's people benefiting from the status quo. And anytime you move that, those people in those positions of influence are going to work to keep that from happening. Certainly the DOD and our military-industrial complex and defense industry, while they have value, we have weapon systems that we're using. I've often kind of joked, but there's a lot of truth to it, that the F-35, one of the greatest advancements in it wasn't that the technology that was built in it. The genius behind it was that they built a supply chain that goes through 35 states or so. And so, every district wants to support the job back home. And so, as opposed to us looking forward and saying, okay, what are the future technologies? And so, when it comes to defense, it's yes, we need to be efficient in how we're spending our money, but the biggest thing is we need to be looking strategically at the future technologies we need to win future wars, and not putting so much investment into systems that are really going out of date.
Well, you mentioned something that triggered a memory of one of Biden's farewell speeches. You said, one of the reasons it's so difficult to change things in Washington is because someone's always benefiting from something. And when you're taking the candy away from the kid, it's going to be a bit of a fight. That said, Joe Biden, on his way out from, as departing president, leaving ashes for a legacy, did come up with a final parting word of advice. He says that Congress members need to stop insider trading. This is an idea that's been around a long time. What do you make of Biden suggesting this on his way out? He's been president for 4 years, and if he wanted action on it, he certainly could have moved on it. I'm a co-sponsor on that legislation to see it done, so I'd like to see it across the finish line. But it's novel that on the way out, I'm not sure how much of that was a shot at Nancy Pelosi with their tenuous relationship right now than it was actually meant to be something to move the ball forward. But I'd love to see that become law. But even more so, we need to take that a step further. And there's people in the executive branch that also need to, because, you just mentioned the military-industrial complex. Well, we need to make sure people at the Pentagon aren't also making decisions based on their stock portfolio, but they're making decisions, and that's just one example. You can go to NIH or anything else, the FDA, and, at a certain executive level in the federal branch, or the executive branch, we need to make sure that those same sort of provisions happen, and we have a bill to address that as well. Those all seem like excellent bills, and conceptually, people, voters support it. But time and again, every time someone tries to move the ball forward to try and limit insider trading in Congress, it always seems to die. I mean, are we facing another chapter where it somehow remains because way too many people are benefiting, or is the pressure finally here to put an end to it?
I like to think we're getting to a critical mass. The American people are aware and more alert than ever. The legacy old school media doesn't have the impact to mislead the American people that they've had in the past. And so people are aware. That helps Congress to be more aware and alert and accountable to the American people. And I think with the likes of the DOGE and movement and President Trump coming in and us recognizing that really we have an 18-month window to do everything we can to save the country. This has got to be not about us. It's got to be about the American people and about making sure we preserve, protect these awesome liberties that we've inherited and pass them on to the next generation. And so we've got to be about that. That's got to drive the day and the decisions that are being made. No doubt, though, it'll be a challenge.
Another bill that you... Oh, of course. Another challenge is a bill that you also introduced this week, the No Retaining Every Gun in a System That Restricts Your Rights Act, the No Registry Act. It's a word, it's a mouthful. Talk about why that's important and what's the momentum under it.
Well, we're really excited for the moment it is. This is, again, an issue we've been working on quite some time, where a few years ago we found out that the ATF had collected millions of gun records over the course of a year, and we thought that seems inordinate. That seemed like a large amount for a short time. And so we began an investigation and found out that indeed they had created a database that included about 1 billion records, gun records on the American people, a searchable digital database. Now, it's already illegal to have a federal gun registry, and they say, well, we're kind of disconnecting the name. They basically take a half step out of it and say, well, it's not a registry, it's just a searchable database. Well, it's an easy workaround, and so by all practical purposes, this is a gun registry, if not the certain makings of it. And so it's illegal at its outset. We're pushing back against it. But what they've done to even weaponize the ATF to go after legal firearm owners across this country has been devastating, and doing everything they can to collect as much information on these people. It's dangerous for the federal government to have this kind of power. That's why we have the Second Amendment, to ensure that we understand this is a God-given liberty. This isn't a grant from government. The right for people to protect themselves, to protect their homes, is a God-given liberty that we understand even supersedes our Constitution. It's just protected in our Constitution. It's something that we have to make sure that we're working to uphold here in Congress.
The mindset of the left just never seems to cease to amaze. They don't care who comes through our border. They don't want to keep a registry of anyone who's coming through our southern or northern border, or any border for that matter. And yet, if you are an American citizen and you own a gun, as is your constitutional right, you have to be documented and stored. I mean, that's the contrast in how they're treating Americans versus citizens is stunning.
It is, and that's one of the tragedies of the Biden administration. It's really been this perversion of justice, where you have the Department of Justice even going, and people who are praying at abortion clinics, they get locked up, but people who commit violent crimes are being released. Even we saw in the pardons that Biden had, with his own son, but even beyond, granting clemency to violent criminals across our country, us letting them into our country, but yet putting extra scrutiny on law-abiding citizens. It's just devastating, and everything they've done through DEI, through ESG, through all these different kind of things, basically to pervert our language in a way to call good evil and evil good. It's devastating to our culture. We see what's going on in Europe. They're just a half step ahead of us, where they're actually putting people in jail for 7 years for a bad post on social media, yet letting criminals roam the streets free. We can't have that in the United States. That's not what this is about. We're one nation under God, indivisible, and we've got to have justice be exactly what it's supposed to be. Happy to see that go. Happy to see President Trump in just a few days be sworn in, and us get back to common sense here in our country.
Well, it is. It's just a few days from now. But breaking news today now is that the inauguration on Monday appears to be moving inside. The weather is going to be it's going to be snowing. It appears the temperature is dropping to single digits. What normally happens, do you expect to have the core group kind of move inside the well of Congress? What do you hear?
Yeah, we're trying to figure out all those details now. We've been working for several days. There's hundreds of people coming through our office and many of the other offices, where people just excited to see and witness this moment in history firsthand, the return of President Donald J. Trump to the Oval Office. Of course, disappointed that it's being moved indoors, but understand the health issues that could be at play with the extreme cold weathers and security issues that could be implicated as well. So certainly understand it. It's certainly disappointing news, but looking on the bright side, it's not unprecedented. Ronald Reagan's second term was also indoors and moved in for very similar reasons, and we can look at that as a pretty good mark on history in the long run. And so while it's disappointing, the important thing is that Donald J. Trump will be back in the Oval Office, making America great again.
That's right. No, that's right. And Reagan did move his second inauguration indoors. I think it was even colder then. It was something like -8 degrees outside. So I think a lot of people were disappointed but grateful not to have to experience frostbite.
All right.
Congressman, thank you so much for the time. We appreciate it.
Thank you. God bless you.
Will President Bolsonaro ever be able to leave Brazil? And why does that matter? Brazilian journalist Paulo Figueiredo lays it out right after this.